Welcome to Hoax Hunter. I'm John Hughston. In this episode, we'll be discussing John Teter for the final time, borrowing a response from John Teter himself, because this video will reveal who John Teter is, the real John Teter. Who is John Teter? You will find out by the end of this video, and you will hear a lot of evidence proving who the author behind John Teter is. John Teter has inspired many people. He inspired the creation of Hoax Hunter. To that I say thank you. I have never claimed that the John Teter story was ever bad-natured. The story has inspired thousands to discuss subjects from the nature of black holes to the nature of space and time. These subjects are very interesting, and they promote a healthy interest in science and the laws of the universe. Because of John Teter, I sent an email to Dr. Michio Kaku, and this is what Dr. Kaku told me about many black holes. Dr. Michio Kaku on John Teter. I think the person you mentioned is a fake. Many black holes do not have the power to bend time. Michio Kaku, January 20th, 2005. I don't believe anyone would argue that the author behind John Teter was a very intelligent person or group of people. For years now, I've wanted to know who authored the John Teter story. Who was typing that day on January 27th, 2001 at 12:45 p.m. on the Post-to-Post Art Bell forum, claiming they were from the year 2036. In this very episode, you will find the answer to this question. After years of searching, I have found the true author behind John Teter. I came across this information in September of 2011. I remember because it was about a month before the passing of Steve Jobs. I learned about this information 2 years after my video entitled John Teter Hoax Debunked and Identity Revealed. Please note, that old video from 2009 still contains relevant comments concerning John Teter's prediction mistakes, but the identity reveal of that video is no longer up to date. In this video, I will reveal who I believe 100% to be the true identity of John Teter. In 2009, I claimed Richard Haber may or may not have been John Teter, based on the evidence I had at the time. I no longer believe this is the case because of the amount of evidence pointing in the direction of another individual who you will become familiar with by the end of this video. I do apologize to Richard Haber for claiming he may or may not be John Teter, but you will see, even in that 2009 video, that I wasn't even close to 100% sure that he was JT. I was not 100% confident he was. It was only a shred of evidence I had at the time, and I made a video about it. But Richard Haber seems to have been a good sport about it, and I'm sure Richard is an intelligent guy. But there is another who fills the shoes of John Teter more perfectly, because he is the author behind John Teter. The reason this video has been postponed for 2 years is because I wanted to be 100% sure and 100% confident in the evidence. I have known about this evidence since September of 2011. The following is how I came upon the evidence and the final reveal of that evidence, which is far more than a P.O. box associated with a name, I assure you. It involves a large amount of text-based evidence. The full report can be seen linked in the description of this video. I came across an article about the vulnerabilities of Apple computers after the Apple virus of 2011. Some of you may recall hearing about it. I remember reading about it in USA Today and seeing it on major news networks for a few days. A virus released in 2011 was specifically designed to attack Apple computers. This article that I read in 2011 was entitled The Apple Way of Insecurity. It was written by Morey Haber, a name that I had never heard of until I came across this article, but the last name was familiar. Morey Haber's most successful publication to date is this article, The Apple Way of Insecurity, which is dated April 12, 2010. I will link this article in the description of this video. I didn't see the article until about a month before Steve Jobs' death in October of 2011. Naturally, I wondered if Morey Haber was related to Larry Haber. One search later yielded results verifying that they indeed were brothers. Morey was the brother of Larry Haber that I never knew existed. So I began to follow Morey Haber's computer security blog. I was just casually trying to see if his writing was similar to John Teter's, not knowing if I would find any matches at all. The more I read Morey Haber's blog, the more matches I found, but I wanted to have more proof before I made a claim that Morey was John Teter. So I decided to compile every one of Morey Haber's blog posts and every one of John Teter's posts. I made a side-by-side comparison of the words, phrases, and writing styles of these two authors. I honestly didn't know what I would find. I was skeptical myself before I saw the results. After I saw the results, I was surprised and astounded. There was a highly unusual number of exact phrase matches and uncommon words used by both Morey Haber and John Teter. But it was more than just exact phrases and exact words. The writing styles were the same. The linguistic fingerprint of an author will change over the years as they learn new words and study new subjects. When an author's writing style is fully developed, it is nearly impossible for them to avoid leaving behind traces of their unique linguistic fingerprint. The writings of John Teter included in this comparative study range from 2000 to 2001. The writings of Morey Haber included in this comparative study range from 2010 to 2012. Separated by over 9 years, the unique linguistic fingerprint of these two authors can be seen overlapping in each other's writings. They share a large number of exact phrases, some of which are very uncommon. Sharing a few phrases is not uncommon if you speak the same language, but sharing the number of exact phrases as seen in this comparative study is astounding. Additionally, both authors share an extensive understanding and expertise concerning computer languages. John Teter was an IBM computer expert, being familiar with a little-known feature in the IBM 5100 computer. The obsolete IBM model had an obscure feature making it immune to the Y2K bug. Many John Teter fans already know this, but I mention this as a background because Morey Haber is also a computer expert. IBM experts have confirmed the only people that knew about this obscure feature in the IBM 5100 would have been past IBM employees, or experts in the field, or extreme enthusiasts in the field. In the year 2000, Morey Haber was an expert in the field of computer network management systems. Throughout all of John Teter's writings, Apple computers, or Mac computers, were mentioned exactly 0 times. His focus was always on IBM. From the perspective of a time traveler, this seems a bit odd, given the extreme exposure Apple products have had in the world since the year 2000. From iPods to iPhones to iPads, John Teter mentioned these 0 times. Based on this, I would conclude that John Teter was not a fan of Apple computers, but clearly a fan of IBM. Morey Haber's most successful publication, The Apple Way of Insecurity, in which he discusses the vulnerability of Apple computers, led me to believe that, like John Teter, he was not a fan of Apple computers. I read Morey Haber's blog after the passing of Steve Jobs in October of 2011. I was checking to see if he had anything to say about the late technology innovator, but like John Teter, he had nothing to say on the subject. Both Morey Haber and John Teter are fans of Stephen Hawking. Both have read Dr. Hawking's books and were so impressed by them that they wrote about Dr. Hawking's books on the internet. Both are prolific writers, John having authored many posts on the internet on the subject of time travel and history, and Morey having written many blogs on the subject of computer security. The matches between the words and phrases of John Teter and Morey Haber is undeniable. With the set amount of text examples available, separated by 9 years, both John Teter and Morey Haber share 2 6-word phrases, 5 5-word phrases, 61 4-word phrases, over 400 3-word phrases, and an immense amount of 2-word phrases that I was not able to count, including a variety of uncommonly used words. But it goes beyond this. They share the same writing style. Both of them do not like contractions. They prefer to say do not instead of don't. They prefer to say you are instead of you're. They prefer to say I am instead of I'm. Tiny things like this are proof that both of them share the exact same writing style. Many additional matches have yet to be found, as there is a massive amount of text which had to be manually converted into text form and double-checked. The exact phrase and word matches were done manually by myself, with the rough matches being done with the aid of a program called wCopyfind. wCopyfind is an open-source program that compares documents and checks for matches in their words and phrases. The program is primarily used to detect plagiarism. The creator of wCopyfind is University of Virginia's Professor of Physics, Dr. Louis Bloomfield. He had the following to say concerning this project. Your project sounds interesting. I hadn't thought of using wCopyfind to sniff out the identity of an anonymous writer, but that seems plausible. Dr. Louis Bloomfield. Every match has been manually verified by myself. I have been compiling and studying the following matches on and off, starting approximately 1 month before the passing of Steve Jobs on October 5, 2011, until now. I believe all followers of the John Teter story deserve to see this evidence and judge for themselves. I welcome all experts in the field of linguistics to respond with your expert opinions. In my opinion, these exact phrase matches reveal both authors share the same unique linguistic fingerprint, verifying they are the same unique individual author. The following is my side-by-side comparative study between John Teter and Morey Haber's writings. These unique word matches, exact phrase matches, and writing styles prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the writings of these two authors were authored by the same solitary individual. Please note, Morey Haber was writing in a professional business setting about computer security, while John Teter was writing in a casual setting in his spare time about history and time travel. The following is a small selection of the 2 6-word phrases, 5 5-word phrases, 61 4-word phrases, over 400 3-word phrases, and an immense amount of 2-word phrases, including a variety of uncommonly used words. Not only are some of the words uncommon, but some of the words are uncommon used in an uncommon context. You will see what I'm talking about. The master list of these matches will be available in the description of this video, as will the full comparative study. Both John Teter and Morey Haber share these uncommon words: streamlined, autonomous, syntax, vectors, hawking, thwart, baseline, snapshot, and snapshots, exponentially, inherent, infrastructure, periodically. Not only do they share these same uncommon words, but they share some of these uncommon words in the exact same context. Some of them in unusual contexts where the average person would not associate that word with that thing. Both John Teter and Morey Haber share these word combinations: it is, do not, did not, I am, I would, I have, there is, that is, was not, will not, you have, are not. And they both rarely use these contractions, if ever. It's, don't, didn't, I'm, I'd, I've, there's, that's, wasn't, won't, you'll, you've, aren't. This is a big clue as to them being the same person, because the average person doesn't avoid contractions like this. It's simply Morey Haber and John Teter's writing style. They just don't like using contractions very often. You'll see them occasionally, rarely, but most of the time you will not, and you'll see these alternatives to the contractions. It is an older writing style. The writing style probably baby boomers would prefer. The following are the quote comparisons. This is a 4-word phrase match. My background is in network management systems, Morey Haber. My background is in history, John Teter. Now clearly, John Teter is going to be talking about history and time travel, and Morey Haber is going to be talking about computers and technological advances and vulnerabilities and things like that. And so they're going to be talking about two different subjects, but they're going to be using the same linguistic fingerprint because, in my opinion, they are the same person. I base this opinion on the evidence you are about to continue to see. They maintain a stable configuration and will thwart an attack even when no patch is present. Morey Haber. As the Japanese planes were flying toward the island, they actually picked them up in time to thwart the surprise attack. John Teter. The word thwart is a pretty uncommon word, and they both use the word thwart in combination with the word attack, which I suppose is not very uncommon. But there are more examples of uncommon words used in uncommon contexts, which you will see. It was solved by taking a snapshot of the local gravity around the unit before leaving a world line and incorporating it into the sinusoid during travel. John Teter. Essentially, it is a snapshot of the report stored in the database from the date and time it was run and never changes based on any new or purged data for its rendering. Morey Haber. This is a four-word phrase exact match, including an uncommon word, snapshot. Based on the accuracy and timing of the snapshot, the distortion units are limited to how long they can travel before becoming unstable. John Teter. Morey Haber also uses the word snapshot and associates it with the word time. It is just as important for them if they update the solution in between jobs that are used to produce a single and final report for a snapshot in time. Morey Haber. And it continues. A safe snapshot stores the data permanently as is into the database. Morey Haber. I would not plan on planting myself permanently next to a water source. Yes, distillation dose make water safe, but the runoff is highly dangerous. John Teter occasionally makes grammatical errors, like dose instead of does. This is because he's in a more casual setting, whereas Morey Haber doesn't make any typos because he is producing these articles and he's being paid to do so on a professional level. The reason time travelers do not reveal themselves is because your society scares the hell out of us. We do not want to end up in a cement room on a permanent supply of sodium pentothal as men with lab coats poke at our machines with a screwdriver. John Teter. Here is a good example of an uncommon word used in an uncommon context. Morey Haber associates the word infrastructure with computers many times. I don't know about you, but I have asked people, what is your association to the word infrastructure? When you hear the word infrastructure, what's the first thing that comes to mind? And the answer that I got from an individual was, roads and streets of a city. And another person said structure, buildings. And, roads and streets and cities and buildings are very common associations with the word infrastructure. But computers, the internal workings of computers, and computer code and computer data is usually not associated with the word infrastructure. This is a very unusual association, and it is not a commonly used word. Most of us don't walk around saying infrastructure this, infrastructure that. But Morey Haber and John Teter both associate the word infrastructure with computers, and I will show you these examples now. It is how the data is identified, escalated, reported, and managed throughout a complex infrastructure that is important. Morey Haber. Only the web server and supporting infrastructure should have access to any middleware and databases. Morey Haber. Unix will have a timeout error in 2038, and many of the mainframe systems that ran a large part of the infrastructure were based on very old IBM computer code. John Teter. A great deal of the computer infrastructure you depend on is based on very old systems and code. John Teter. Both John Teter and Morey Haber are familiar with Unix computer systems. Strategic solution to support Unix and network devices, all from one product. Morey Haber. And here's a four-word phrase match in the same context with computers as well. The 5100 has the ability to easily translate between the old IBM code, APL Basic, and with a few tweaks in 1975 Unix. John Teter. With Retina CS, a user has the ability to create smart groups and smart rules based on almost any discovered trait of host. Morey Haber. And here is a 6-word phrase match. Is based on the number of. A measure of how open a system is to an attack. This is based on how open a system is based on the number of open ports, shares, services, and users a host contains and the lack of protection such as a firewall or antivirus solution. Morey Haber. And here's John Teter using the same 6-word phrase match, but talking about history. Military power is based on the number of autonomous fighting men who are actually willing to fight. John Teter uses the word autonomous, which is not a very common word. Morey Haber also uses the word autonomous. Exploitable by functional mobile autonomous code or no exploit required and can be a manual trigger. Morey Haber. And here's a 5-word phrase match in the last few months. Outdated iPhone models have been priced more and more competitively in the last few months. Morey Haber. In the last few months, I have had numerous extended conversations online. John Teter. Here's an uncommonly used word in the same context. The word streamlined. I associate the word streamlined with perhaps a new design for a car, a new design for an airplane that's aerodynamic. That's just what I think of. I'm sure many people think of different things, but government is not something that comes to mind. That seems to be an unusual association with the word streamlined. The word streamlined itself, I believe, is very uncommon. I don't use that word very often. I don't know anybody that does. But both Morey Haber and John Teter use the uncommon word streamlined and associate it uncommonly with government. Streamlined reporting for government and corporate standards with built-in vulnerability. Morey Haber. Federal law has also been streamlined, but much harder to change or make additions to. John Teter. Here is another example of an uncommonly used word, used in an uncommon context. When you think of the word inherent, what's the first thing that pops into your mind? When I think of the word inherent, I think something is inherently evil. That's the first thing that pops into my mind. But not Morey Haber and John Teter. Morey Haber and John Teter associate the word inherent with computers. Operating system elevations for managing tasks inherent to the OS. Morey Haber. There is inherent error and chaos in the computer's ability to make accurate calculations. John Teter. As users begin to connect these devices to the corporate infrastructure, primarily through email, they can assess if their device has inherent vulnerabilities. Morey Haber. Here is another uncommonly used word, vectors. I don't believe I've ever used the word vectors in a casual conversation in my entire life, but both Morey Haber and John Teter are familiar with this word and they use it. The overall expression of risk is calculated based on 4 high-level vectors. Morey Haber. The technical presentation of these vectors translates into operational measurements for the business. Morey Haber. There are vectors where you can approach the singularity without being crushed by gravity. John Teter. Here's another uncommon word, the word syntax. I do not use the word syntax at all, but both Morey Haber and John Teter use the word syntax, and they put the word and right after it. Do not follow the correct syntax and. Morey Haber. Make such errors in the syntax and. John Teter. In the quote by Morey Haber about Stephen Hawking, he uses an uncommon word, baseline. I don't use the word baseline. I don't know anybody that uses the word baseline, but both Morey Haber and John Teter use the word baseline. You must first establish a baseline. Morey Haber. Just coming up with a stable baseline. Morey Haber. It throws off the baseline, no stress readings. John Teter. Here is where John Teter uses the 3-word phrase frame of reference. Please consider that our frame of reference is quite different. I hope we can move past the collective insistence of applying everything to this frame of reference. John Teter. In the Morey Haber quote about Stephen Hawking, there are many key matches. In this quote by Morey Haber, the gray matches are common single words. The yellow matches are less than common words or two-word phrases. The blue matches are connected to an uncommon word measurements, used in an uncommon context. Both Morey Haber and John Teter used the uncommon term measurements when discussing quantum physics, gravity, or the curving of a line. The dark green matches are matches for the uncommon term frame of reference, which both Morey Haber and John Teter use. The purple matches are the uncommon mention of Hawking and the uncommon word baseline, which both John Teter and Morey Haber use. The red match is a very interesting match. In this quote we see Morey Haber uses the phrase set of observations. In John Teter's farewell post he used the phrase set of observable, which is a very rare phrase. As they are both talking about the mechanics of the universe, I would say they are using this very rare phrase in the same context. Both John Teter and Morey Haber use the uncommon word exponentially. Yes, that is possible, but the divergence grows exponentially. John Teter. My costs would skyrocket and my learning curve would ramp up exponentially. Morey Haber. Both John Teter and Morey Haber use the four-word phrase match as long as the. As long as the firewall has no IPS or packet shaping features, the scan will work correctly. Morey Haber. As long as the links last, I do urge people to go back and take a look. John Teter. Both Morey Haber and John Teter share the four-word phrase, ask yourself how many. I've never used the phrase ask yourself how many very often, but I have heard some people use it, and it's probably slightly older people from myself. First, ask yourself how many Windows 2000 workstations and servers you have deployed in your environment. Morey Haber. Yes, you will be forced to ask yourself how many civil rights you will give up to feel safe. John Teter. If I am wrong, then everything I have said might possibly have made you think about the world in a different way is suddenly discredited. I do not want either. John Teter. Now that's a four-word match, I do not want. And here's Morey Haber using that match. I do not want to be hidden from the internet. My livelihood depends on you finding this blog and other articles that I write, so it is in my best interest not to try to hide my information. Morey Haber. I do not want to draw additional attention to myself. John Teter. Well, if you didn't want to draw additional attention to yourself, John Teter, then why did you go on Art Bell's Post-to-Post AM forum and say, I am a time traveler from the year 2036? That is a scream for attention, and attention is what you got. Here's an exact four-word match. Once they have made all the selections just the way they like them, a save button is available to store the reporting filters exactly the way they like them for future reports. Morey Haber. Good thinking, but that's not exactly the way they work, and divergence is not cumulative. John Teter. Here's a four-word phrase match. Falls into this category. The topic is so broad that almost every security vendor falls into this category. Morey Haber. In his own strange way, even Javier falls into this category. John Teter. Here's a four-word phrase match with the same context of talking about websites. For more information on how to take advantage of collections, please visit our site. Morey Haber. For more information on black holes and singularities, I did find this site. John Teter. Here's another four-word phrase match. For the same reason, we use MS Office as a comprehensive tool for daily operations. Morey Haber. I suspect Art is growing weary of people claiming to be time travelers for the same reason. John Teter. And there John Teter's talking about Art Bell, the host, which he faxed a message to back in the late 90s. I listened to that show live, and I didn't think much of it. Art Bell said he would keep an eye on the guy, and perhaps he called in, perhaps not. But every John Teter expert agrees that original fax to Art Bell is the precursor to the story that became the John Teter story on the Art Bell Post-to-Post forums. in the year 2000. Here's another four-word phrase match. Non-critical systems are not assessed and could be used as a beachhead to infiltrate an organization. Morey Haber. Good and evil does not exist as an organized force in our lives, nor can it be used as a useful way to judge what God may think of a situation. John Teter. Here's another four-word match. If you do not have a lab, virtualize the server using tools. Morey Haber. The various email and web accounts I have do not have a big sign that says "Time Machine this way." John Teter. Another four-word phrase match. Independent silos and do not have any correlation. Morey Haber. Unfortunately, I do not have any money with me. John Teter. Four-word phrase match. If you want to see Blink 6.0 in action, please watch the video below. Morey Haber. If you want to leave a message to yourself in the future, feel free to do so. John Teter. Another four-word phrase match. No, but I did have a chance to convince myself otherwise. John Teter. We did not even have a chance to load any management utilities or even perform a vulnerability assessment. Morey Haber. Another four-word phrase match. I might make has a slight chance of being incorrect anyway, and you now have the ability to act on it. John Teter. Major vendors have the ability to perform vulnerability assessment delta reports. Morey Haber. Not only do they both say have the ability to, they both say having the ability to. Having the ability to go back and help the you there. John Teter. Having the ability to see everything is just as important. Morey Haber. Here's another four-word phrase match, ending in a colon. Here are a few other comments I found interesting, John Teter. Here are a few important features to consider, Morey Haber. And here's a four-word phrase match ending in a question mark. How do you know it doesn't work? John Teter. How do you know it's a CAD drawing? John Teter. How do you know what these are and what risk they represent? Morey Haber. How do you know when your system is out of date and can be exploited via a vulnerability? Morey Haber. John Teter mentioned CAD drawings right there. Someone in the thread must have suggested that the schematic he uploaded was a CAD drawing originally. Morey Haber also is familiar with CAD drawings and the AutoCAD program. Applications like VMware Workstation or AutoCAD to operate correctly for specific subnets. Morey Haber. Another four-word phrase match. Understanding the age of vulnerabilities and how they relate to my business. Morey Haber. The war had very profound effects on people and how they relate to each other. John Teter. Both John Teter and Morey Haber use the word periodically. Auditors periodically may visit your business and review security procedures. Morey Haber. I will check in periodically to check this site. John Teter. And here are some additional matches. I am aware of several vendors building kiosks on standard Windows platforms. Morey Haber. I am aware of the Mayan calendar, but in 2012 it was not something I was able to think about. John Teter. I have seen a trend. Morey Haber. I have seen a television program. John Teter. I look forward to speaking at it again. Morey Haber. I look forward to discussing. John Teter. I look forward to more. John Teter. I look forward to these last few weeks. John Teter. I would like to review with you. Morey Haber. I would like to examine the software you mentioned. John Teter. I would only hope they would spark conversation. John Teter. I would only hope a good Samaritan would return it. Morey Haber. That made it bad in the first place. John Teter. Protect hosts in the first place. Morey Haber. Is about the same although I do. John Teter. Is about the same width as an iPhone. Morey Haber. Is not enough to get to God. John Teter. Is not enough to prioritize remediation. Morey Haber. Know the answer to that question. John Teter. Know the answer to this. Morey Haber. Much more of a liability. Morey Haber. Much more of a personal. John Teter. And now here is a six-word phrase match. Can have a drastic impact on. I don't know anyone that uses this six-word phrase match, but both Morey Haber and John Teter do. Bottom line, virtualization of a machine does not change the resources required for it to function properly. Underpowering SQL or management components can have a drastic impact on performance and user experience. Morey Haber. I have found that many misunderstandings and arguments are based on the difference in understanding over a single word. Two different cultures can have a drastic impact on the meaning of words like proof, trust, and credibility. John Teter. and I will end with repeating what I believe to be some key phrases, even though they're very short. My background is in network management systems, Morey Haber. My background is in history, John Teter. I do not want to be hidden from the internet, Morey Haber. I do not want to draw additional attention to myself, John Teter. The hundreds, if not up to 1,000 significant matches continue in the master text file, but what has been covered is the bulk of the most outstanding matches I was able to find. Everyone is welcome to send me their feedback. If you know a linguistic expert that specializes in text-based writing styles, please tell them about this video. They are more than welcome to send me their expert opinions on the comparative study, and I would be happy to share this in my next video. Baby boomers range from the years 1946 to 1960, after World War II. Darby, the John Teter expert, was right about JT being a baby boomer. Here's a quote from Darby. I refer to the author of the John Teter story as boomer because the evidence in his writings suggests that he is of baby boomer age. Darby. In 2011, Morey J. Haber was 43 years old, the exact age as seen on the 2011 John Teter Confession YouTube Hoax profile. Morey is now around 45 years old. He's a younger baby boomer, but still qualifies as one. I am completely and utterly 100% confident in this side-by-side comparative study. I'm confident that it is truthful, accurate, and reveals what has yet to be revealed. Concrete, verifiable proof proving the author behind the writings of John Teter. My hat's off to you, Morey J. Haber. You wrote the most successful time travel tale in recent history, a story that will surely live beyond 2036. I will end with the following quotes. I do not want to draw additional attention to myself, John Teter. I do not want to be hidden from the internet, Morey Haber. Thank you for joining us. This has been John Hughston with Hoax Hunter. Be seeing you.